this is my TPA presentation. I did my TPA at White Sulphur Elementary. White Sulphur Elementary is located in Greenbrier County, West Virginia. White Sulphur Elementary is a Title I school which has the grades pre-K through 5th grade. There are approximately 340 students at White Sulphur Elementary. At White Sulphur Elementary, many of the students live in foster care with their grandparents or another relative. There are 8 students at White Sulphur Elementary that are homeless. I had the privilege to teach in one of the 3 5th grade classrooms. The room that I taught in had 22 students. Of the 22 students, there were 12 girls and 10 boys that ranged from 10 to 11 years old. There were 3 students with IEPs. One was a visually impaired student, one was an autistic student, and one was an English second language learner. I also had one student in the classroom with a 504 plan, which I would need to consider all of these students when planning my lessons. I had 3 learning goals set in place for my students. The first learning goal that I had was for students to be able to add and subtract fractions with like or unlike denominators. My second learning goal was for students to build on the first learning goal and to be able to add and subtract mixed numbers. My third learning goal built on learning goal 1 and 2. My third learning goal was for students to be able to solve word problems that had adding and subtracting fractions with like or unlike denominators, or word problems with mixed numbers in them. Learning goal of having students add and subtract fractions with like and unlike denominators, I gave the students a pretest before teaching my unit. During my unit, I assessed the students formatively through raising their hands using whiteboards and standing up when they knew the answer to the problems. I also gave the students a worksheet for me to assess their understanding individually instead of as a whole class. For the end of Learning Goal 1, I gave the students the same test as I did before I taught my unit, and I used this as a post-test. For Learning Goal 2 of adding and subtracting mixed numbers, I gave the students a pretest as I did for Learning Goal 1. For formative assessment, I had the students use whiteboards, answer orally, and raise their hands. I also gave the students a color by number to assess their understanding and for them to refer to check, to remember, to reduce. For my post-assessment, I also gave the pre-test again for my post-test. For learning goal 3 of adding and subtracting fractions with like and unlike denominators and also mixed numbers in word problem format, I also gave the students a pretest. For my formative assessment, I used pages from the students' math books, and I also used task cards that I had got off of Teachers Pay Teachers. The students were also given a worksheet with word problems to test their understanding. When I was finished with my unit, I gave the students the pre-test again as a post-test. Below are pictures of the pre and post tests that I gave to the students. Here are some of the examples of the formative assessment that I used with the students, such as my task cards, the coloring by number, worksheets, and also pages from their book. I also had the students use their whiteboards, raise of hand, and standing up for me to formally assess them. I had two focus students. My first focus student was very low in math. She also had a 504 plan. She is a very slow worker and often got behind and then got very confused in the concepts due to working so slow and not grasping the concept. I also noticed that she really needed encouragement. So during my unit plan, I worked one-on-one with her. I taught the lessons to her again, and I made sure that she was understanding. I worked problems with her, and I helped her find her errors. Often she had simple errors, but she actually caught on to what I was teaching very quickly, and she did not get behind with me working one-on-one. I did have her work with a partner who did help her understand. I also modified her work. For example, when I gave her the pre and post test, I did not count off when she did not completely simplify. I noticed by the end of the unit plan that she was encouraged and very proud of her own work and very proud of all of the improvements that she had made in math. I also noticed that she started to very much enjoy math. My second focus student was also very low in math, and she also needed more time with the concepts. She did also lack confidence, but most of her problem was that she got distracted by peers and couldn't focus in math. So during my unit, I made sure that I worked one-on-one with her. I helped her to find her mistakes and work on them. I also made sure that she was understanding each step. I moved her from who she was sitting with originally to make sure that she was more on task, and I also had her work with a partner. By the end of the unit, I noticed that she had gained confidence and understanding of what we were doing, and also not becoming distracted even when I moved her back next to the person she was sitting beside at the beginning of the unit. This is the link to my teaching video. For learning goal 1 of adding and subtracting fractions with like and unlike denominators, a majority of the class scored 11% on their pre-assessment. I had 3 students who scored higher due to having had experience with adding and subtracting fractions with unlike denominators on ALEX. All of my students did improve, as you can see, except for student 11. My focus students went up greatly. As a whole class for learning goal 1, the students improved from 21% to 83.16%. Here is a closer look of my Focus Student 1 and Focus Student 2 on their pre- and post-assessment for learning goal 1. They started about the same and ended about the same. They were 3% off on the post-assessment, but I noticed that a majority of their mistakes were multiplication errors or adding and subtracting errors. For learning goal 2 of adding and subtracting mixed numbers with like and unlike denominators, many of the students knew how to add and subtract mixed numbers with like denominators and did fairly well on the pre-assessment. Many of the students received a 50%. A few of them did go under 50%. On learning goal 2's post-assessment, all of the students improved and did very well with mixed numbers. The students that did have errors had multiplication errors or adding and subtracting errors. Here's a look of my learning goal 2 with the whole class. The class started out with 44.16% on the pre-assessment, and for their post-assessment after the lesson plan or the lesson unit, the students were at 89.68%. Here's a look at my focus students closer for learning goal 2. My first focus student did fairly well on the pre-assessment, and she did increase to 88% on her post-assessment. My second focus student did not do as well on her pre-assessment. She had a 38%, but she did greatly improve to a 75%. She also just had little errors of trying to find her least common denominator or common denominator. For learning goal 3 of adding and subtracting fractions with like and unlike denominators and mixed fractions in word format, on my pre-assessment, many students started out at 0% and were very low in this area of word problem knowledge. We did work on this greatly with worksheets and with task cards in class discussing them. All of the students did improve on their post-assessment, but when it came to the post-assessment, I noticed that the students did not use their knowledge of keywords for what means addition and what means subtraction, and that led to many errors on the post-test. But I was very proud of the students knowing how to do the problem, just messing up with simple errors that can be fixed and easily discussed. My Learning Goal 3 assessment for the whole group did start out extremely low at 16.63%, but the students as a whole did improve to 70.63% on their post-assessment, even with the errors, and I was very proud of how much the students had improved on Learning Goals 1, 2, and 3. For Learning Goal 3, my focus student 1 and 2 both started out at 0%, but throughout the unit, I saw that they were starting to understand. They did very well with in-class formative assessment, but on the post-assessment, my focus student did improve to 50, or my focus student 1 did improve to 57%, and my focus student 2 improved to 43%. As I said previously, with many of the word problems on the post-assessment, the student struggled with knowing which form of operation to use. I noticed that both students did set their problems up correctly, but because they had the incorrect teaching of my TPA and unit plan, I learned many things. I learned that when the teacher enjoys math and is excited about the lesson, that the students are more likely to be excited and more engaged in the lesson. I also learned that students are going to be on different levels and that I needed to differentiate on how to work with them, because I had students that already knew the concepts, but I had students that didn't know the building blocks to the concepts. I also learned to be flexible with this, and I also learned that things will not go as planned as I always hoped. I also learned that students need breaks occasionally to help, even if it's just a few seconds getting up, doing a quick game to review, anything to get them back on task and focused for class. I had some successful experiences with my TPA, and I also had some unsuccessful experiences with my TPA. These really taught me to be prepared and flexible and be ready for anything to come at me. These are the resources that I used for my TPA and my unit plan.